For more, we turn to Advocate Monique Beadle, Director at the U.S. Policy and Diplomacy at the Jerusalem Institute of Justice. Thank you for joining me, Monique. What are the practical implications for Netanyahu and Gallant here?
Well, this is going to have implications for their travel schedule, certainly. There are a number of EU countries who are members of the court who are now lining up with statements saying that they plan to respect the decision of the court, which means that it would not be considered wise for them to travel to these jurisdictions. The Jerusalem Institute of Justice is really disappointed in this decision. We actually intervened in the court and submitted a friend of the court brief back in August and explaining that the court has no jurisdiction to issue these arrest warrants against Israeli leaders. And the reason why is very simple. There is no such thing as a state of Palestine. There is no such entity that could accede to the Rome Statute, which forms the jurisdiction of this court. And certainly, according to the terms of the Oslo Accords, this entity cannot confer jurisdiction over Israeli leadership. So we're really disappointed in this very political decision. It's also very disappointing to see that the court has essentially granted an arrest warrant for a dead man, Mohammed Deif, in order to give itself a veneer of legitimacy so that it can pursue Israeli leaders.
Right, and as you said, Israel isn't a member state of the ICC, but could Israel still abide to these rulings by the court in order to avoid, let's say, acting like a rogue entity?
I think the most likely scenario is that Israel will request a deferral of this case now that arrest warrants have been issued. It actually did already request a deferral, and the pretrial chamber just came back with a ruling today saying that that was not timely, that it needs to issue arrest warrants first, and then there will be a deferral. So I think that's the most likely next outcome.
And Gallant was fired from his defense minister position about 2 weeks ago, making now Israel Katz the new defense minister. Could he also be subjected to a ruling of this kind?
The arrest warrants are based on evidence submitted to the court leading up to about the month of May of 2024. So they do not cover the time frame for which Minister Katz has been in charge of the defense ministry. But yes, of course, that is certainly a risk, and it's a risk that all Israeli leaders face today. The court has really given a reward to terrorist organizations through this decision and has basically sent a signal to terrorist organizations that if you want to fight an army, a democratically governed army that complies with the laws of war and international humanitarian law, go ahead and just use that as a tactical source of weakness. Hide yourself behind civilians, militarize hospitals, because the result will be the delegitimization of the democratically governed army that you're fighting.
Now, I understand that the Jerusalem Institute of Justice condemns the decision, but how easy or difficult, for that matter, is a case like this to prove?
One of the challenges is that the prosecutor submitted a lot of evidence which was based on United Nations entities and experts and mandate holders and humanitarian organizations. The Jerusalem Institute of Justice has United Nations consultative status, which means that we interact with these humanitarian organizations and mandate holders on a regular basis. And we've seen firsthand how they become a self-referential echo chamber of information. They base all of their information primarily on the Hamas Ministry of Health statistics, which are generated from Gaza. And people need to remember that there are Hamas leaders on the United Nations payroll. So I think if this case were ever to come to trial, you would find that most of the evidence is extremely flimsy and doesn't hold up under scrutiny.
Right, it'll be interesting to see how this all develops. Thank you for your insight, Advocate Monique Beadle, Director of the U.S. Policy and Diplomacy, Jerusalem Institute of Justice.